The fluorescent lights in the prosecutor's office hummed softly as Sarah Mitchell read through the case file for the fifth time that morning. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago, untouched on the edge of her cluttered desk. She'd been a prosecutor in Hamilton County, Ohio for 7 years, but nothing had prepared her for this case. 3-year-old Emma Rodriguez, the only witness to one of the most brutal domestic violence cases Sarah had ever handled. Sarah flipped through the crime scene photos, her jaw clenching. Maria Rodriguez, 28 years old, had suffered a broken cheekbone, fractured ribs, and a concussion. The attack had been vicious, methodical, and terrifying. And little Emma had witnessed every horrifying moment from the doorway of her bedroom, clutching her stuffed teddy bear. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," Sarah called, straightening in her chair. Maria Rodriguez entered, holding Emma's hand. The woman moved carefully, still healing from injuries sustained 6 weeks earlier. Her face, once beautiful in the photos Sarah had seen, now bore the fatting yellow-green of old bruises. But it was the haunted look in her eyes that struck Sarah most deeply, the look of someone whose entire world had shattered. And Emma, Sarah's heart broke looking at the little girl. She was small for 3 years old, with dark curly hair pulled into 2 ponytails and wearing a pink dress with cartoon characters. But her eyes, those should have been bright and curious, full of life. Instead, they stared blankly ahead, empty and distant. "Thank you for coming, Maria," Sarah said gently, gesturing to the chairs across from her desk. "Please sit down." Maria helped Emma into the chair, and the child immediately pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. She said nothing. She didn't even look around the room. "Has there been any change?" Sarah asked quietly, though she already knew the answer. Maria's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. "Nothing, not one word. She won't talk to me, won't talk to the therapist, won't talk to anyone. She barely eats. She doesn't play anymore. It's like—" her voice cracked. "It's like I lost my daughter that night too." Sarah reached across the desk, gently touching Maria's hand. "We're going to help her, I promise." But even as she said the words, doubt gnawed at her. How could they help Emma when the child had completely shut down? The pediatric psychologist's report sat in the file: severe trauma, selective mutism, probable PTSD. The doctor had been clear. Pushing Emma to talk about that night could cause even more psychological damage. "Maria, I need to be honest with you," Sarah said, her voice heavy. "Without Emma's testimony, our case is weak. Your ex-husband's lawyer is good, too good. He's already filed motions to suppress evidence, claiming illegal search procedures. The defense is arguing that your injuries could have come from a fall, that you're lying to get custody of Emma." "I'm not lying." Maria's voice rose, startling Emma. The little girl flinched, pressing herself deeper into the chair. "I know you're not," Sarah assured her quickly, softening her tone. "But without Emma's testimony, without her being able to tell the court what she saw, the jury might have reasonable doubt. And if they have doubt—" "He walks free," Maria finished, her voice barely a whisper. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. "And then what? He gets visitation rights, custody. He tried to kill me, Ms. Mitchell, in front of our daughter. And now Emma is—" She looked at her child, who sat motionless, staring at nothing. "She's trapped inside her own mind, and I don't know how to reach her." The office fell silent except for the hum of the lights and the distant sound of ringing phones from the hallway. Sarah looked at Emma, studying the child's blank expression, the way her tiny fingers gripped her teddy bear so tightly that her knuckles were white. Somewhere inside that traumatized little girl was the truth. Emma had seen everything. She knew exactly what her father had done. But the horror of that night had locked the memories away behind walls of silence that no one seemed able to break through. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from her supervisor: defense filed motion to dismiss. Hearing scheduled for next week. We need the witness ready or we lose this case. 1 week. 7 days to somehow get a 3-year-old who hadn't spoken in 6 weeks to testify in court, about the most traumatic event of her young life. It was impossible. Sarah looked back at Maria, at the desperate hope still flickering in the woman's eyes despite everything. Then she looked at Emma again, really looked at her. This wasn't just a case file or a witness number. This was a little girl whose childhood had been stolen, whose sense of safety had been destroyed, whose voice had been silenced by violence. "I won't give up," Sarah said firmly, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "There has to be a way. I'll talk to Judge Henderson, see if we can get a continuance. I'll consult with more specialists. She used to sing all the time," Maria interrupted softly, staring at her daughter. "Every morning she'd wake up singing. She loved that song from Frozen, you know the one. She'd sing it over and over, making up her own words when she forgot the real ones." A sad smile crossed her face. She was so loud, so happy, so full of life. And now? Emma remained motionless, her eyes unfocused, lost in a world of trauma that adults couldn't reach. Sarah made a decision in that moment. She didn't know how yet, but she would find a way to help this child. She would find a way to give Emma her voice back. Because if they failed, if that monster walked free, it wouldn't just be a legal failure. It would be a failure of every adult who was supposed to protect this little girl. "Give me a few days," Sarah said, standing up with renewed determination. "I'm going to find someone who can help Emma. I promise you, Maria. We're not giving up on your daughter." As Maria and Emma left her office, Sarah was already reaching for her phone, scrolling through contacts, searching for answers. She had 1 week to achieve the impossible. She had 1 week to help a silent 3-year-old find her voice again. Sarah Mitchell's fingers flew across her keyboard, searching desperately through legal databases and psychology journals. It was nearly midnight, and her office had long since emptied. The cleaning crew had come and gone, but Sarah remained, fueled by cold coffee and determination. "Courthouse facility dogs," she muttered, clicking on another article. "Victim support animals, therapy dogs in legal proceedings." She'd spent the last 4 days consulting with child psychologists, trauma specialists, and even a hypnotherapist. Though that last option had been quickly dismissed, nothing seemed right for Emma. Traditional therapy wasn't working. The child psychologist had warned that forcing Emma to confront her trauma too quickly could cause permanent psychological damage. But they were running out of time. Sarah's phone rang, startling her. The caller ID showed her college roommate, Jessica Chen, who now worked as a victim advocate in Seattle. "Jess, it's almost midnight there. What are you?" "I got your email about the Rodriguez case," Jessica interrupted, her voice excited. "Sarah, I think I have your answer. Have you ever heard of courthouse facility dogs?" Sarah sat up straighter. "I've been reading about them, but I don't think Ohio has any programs like that. Most of what I'm finding is from the West Coast." "We don't have one either, but I attended a conference last year where a K-9 officer from Portland presented about his facility dog. Sarah, it was incredible. He showed videos of children who couldn't speak testifying with the dog beside them. Kids who'd been through hell finding their voices again because of a dog trained specifically for this." "But we don't have that program here," Sarah said, frustration creeping into her voice. "No, but you have something even better," Jessica said. "Do you remember Jake Martinez?" Sarah's mind raced back to college. Jake Martinez. He'd been 2 years ahead of them, a criminal justice major who'd wanted to be a police officer since childhood. She remembered him as kind, patient, and absolutely devoted to his dream of helping people. Jake, the guy who used to volunteer at the children's hospital. That's him. He's a K-9 officer now, right there in Hamilton County. And Sarah, his partner, isn't a drug-sniffing dog or a patrol dog. About 3 years ago, he pioneered a program with a facility dog named Brody. It's not widely known because Jake doesn't publicize it. He just quietly helps victims when prosecutors or victim advocates reach out. Sarah's heart began to race. "How did you find this out?" I have a friend who works for Hamilton County Victim Services. When I called her tonight asking about resources in your area, she immediately mentioned Jake and Brody. Apparently, they've helped dozens of witnesses, including several children. She said Jake's been trying to get official funding for years, but he mostly operates under the radar, using his own time and resources. Sarah was already scribbling notes. Do you have his contact information? Already texted it to you. But Sarah, be warned. Jake is very protective of his witnesses and very particular about how Brody is used. He won't just hand over his dog. You'll need to convince him that this is the right approach for Emma. After hanging up, Sarah immediately called the number Jessica had sent. It rang 4 times before a deep, sleep-roughened voice answered. Martinez. Officer Martinez, I'm so sorry to call so late. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a prosecutor with Hamilton County and I have a case. A 3-year-old witness who hasn't spoken since witnessing a brutal assault. I was told you might be able to help. There was a long pause. The Rodriguez case. Sarah blinked in surprise. You know about it. Small county. Word travels in law enforcement circles. That's a tough one. His voice had shifted, now fully alert and professional. Tell me about the child. For the next 20 minutes, Sarah explained everything. Emma's complete silence, the failed therapy attempts, the defense's motion to dismiss, and their rapidly approaching deadline. Jake listened without interrupting. When Sarah finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Ms. Mitchell, I need to be very clear about something. Brody isn't a magic solution. He's a tool, and he works best when there's a comprehensive support system in place. What you're describing, trying to get a severely traumatized child to testify in 1 week, that's not ideal. Sarah's heart sank. I understand, but I'm not saying no, Jake continued. I'm saying we need to be realistic about expectations and very careful about Emma's well-being. Using Brody to force a child to speak before she's ready could do more harm than good. If we do this, we do it right, which means slow, patient, and on Emma's timeline, not the court's. But we only have a week before. Then you need to get a continuance. I'll help however I can, but I won't traumatize a child further just to make a court date. That's non-negotiable. Sarah took a deep breath. She appreciated Jake's protective stance, even if it complicated things. You're right. I'll petition for more time. Can we at least meet? You, me, Emma, and her mother. Let Emma meet Brody and see if there's a connection. Another pause. Then, tomorrow, 3 o'clock at the courthouse, room 145. It's a quiet conference room away from the main courtrooms. I'll bring Brody. But Ms. Mitchell, I need you to understand, this isn't about winning your case. This is about helping a traumatized child heal. If that helps your case along the way, that's secondary. I understand, Sarah said, and she meant it. Thank you, Officer Martinez. Call me Jake, and Ms. Mitchell, don't get your hopes up too high. Some children just aren't ready, and that's okay. We have to respect Emma's journey wherever it leads. After hanging up, Sarah sat back in her chair, staring at her notes. She pulled up photos from Jake's official K-9 unit page. There he was, looking older than she remembered but with the same kind eyes, kneeling beside a beautiful golden retriever with an intelligent, gentle face. Brody. Sarah sent an email to Judge Henderson requesting an emergency meeting about a continuance. Then she called Maria Rodriguez, even though it was well past midnight. Maria, it's Sarah Mitchell. I know it's late, but I think I found someone who might be able to help Emma. His name is Jake Martinez, and he has a very special partner I'd like Emma to meet. Can you bring her to the courthouse tomorrow at 3? On the other end of the line, Maria's voice cracked with emotion. You really haven't given up on her. Never, Sarah promised, not for a second. As Sarah finally packed up her office to go home, she felt something she hadn't felt in days. Hope. It was fragile and uncertain, but it was there. Tomorrow, Emma Rodriguez would meet Brody. And maybe, just maybe, A golden retriever could reach a little girl that humans couldn't. Conference Room 145 was deliberately chosen for its warmth. Unlike the sterile courtrooms with their imposing judges' benches and harsh lighting, this room felt almost cozy. Soft blue walls, comfortable chairs, and a window overlooking a small garden where birds chirped in the afternoon sun. Sarah had arrived early, arranging the furniture to create an open space in the center of the room. She checked her watch, 2:55 p.m. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jake, pulling into parking lot now. Remember, no expectations, no pressure. Let Emma set the pace. 5 minutes later, Maria arrived with Emma. The little girl looked even smaller than Sarah remembered, wearing denim overalls and tiny white sneakers. Her dark curls were pulled back with butterfly clips, and she carried the same worn teddy bear, its fur matted from constant holding. "Thank you for coming," Sarah said softly, kneeling to Emma's eye level. The child didn't acknowledge her, staring past Sarah at the wall with those same vacant eyes. Maria looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't slept in days. "She didn't eat breakfast this morning. I don't know if she's up for this." "We'll just see what happens," Sarah assured her. "No pressure, remember." A knock on the door made them all turn. Jake Martinez entered first, and Sarah was struck by how different he looked from their college days. He was taller than she remembered, or maybe he just carried himself with more authority now. His police uniform was crisp, his dark hair neatly trimmed, but it was his eyes that caught her attention. They held the same kindness she remembered, but now tempered with something deeper, wisdom earned through years of witnessing human suffering. "Ms. Rodriguez, I'm Officer Jake Martinez," he said gently, nodding to Maria. Then he looked down at Emma with a soft smile. "And you must be Emma. I've heard a lot about you." Emma didn't respond. She pressed herself against her mother's leg, her fingers gripping Maria's jeans. "I brought someone I'd like you to meet," Jake continued, his voice calm and unhurried. "His name is Brody. He's a very special friend of mine. Would it be okay if he came in?" Emma still didn't respond, but she didn't retreat either. Jake took that as consent. "Stay," he said quietly to someone outside the door. Then he stepped aside. Brody entered the room and Sarah felt her breath catch. She'd seen his photos online, but they didn't capture the dog's presence. He was a golden retriever, medium-sized with a lustrous coat that seemed to glow in the afternoon sunlight. But it was more than his appearance. There was something in the way he moved, deliberate and gentle, as if he understood the weight of the moment. Emma's body went rigid. Her eyes widened, and for the first time there was a reaction: fear. Maria felt her daughter tense and instinctively tightened her hold. "Emma's afraid of dogs," she whispered to Jake apologetically. "Last year, a neighbor's dog barked at her and—" "I understand," Jake said quietly. "That's actually very common. Brody down." The golden retriever immediately lowered himself to the floor in the center of the room, about 10 feet from where Emma stood with her mother. He placed his head on his paws, his brown eyes watching the little girl with patient calmness. And then nothing. Brody didn't move toward her. He didn't bark or whine or even wag his tail. He simply lay there, breathing quietly, occasionally blinking those gentle eyes. Minutes passed. Sarah shifted uncomfortably, wondering if this was working. Maria stroked Emma's hair absently. Jake stood perfectly still near the door, his posture relaxed, giving the moment space to unfold. 5 minutes became 10. Emma's rigid posture began to soften slightly. Her death grip on her mother's jeans loosened by a fraction. Brody remained motionless, the picture of patience. "He's not going to hurt you, sweetie," Maria whispered. "See, he's just lying there. He's a good dog." Emma's eyes never left Brody. Sarah could see the internal battle playing out on the child's face, fear warring with curiosity. 15 minutes. Then slowly, so slowly Sarah almost missed it, Emma's hand released her mother's jeans. Jake caught Sarah's eye and gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. "Don't react. Don't make a sound." Emma took one tiny step forward, then stopped, as if expecting Brody to leap up and bark. The dog didn't move. His tail gave the smallest wag once, but otherwise he remained still. Another step. Emma was now about 8 feet away from Brody. Maria had tears streaming silently down her face, her hand covering her mouth to suppress any sound that might break the spell. Another step, 6 feet. Brody's tail wagged again, a gentle swish against the floor, but he kept his head down, non-threatening, patient as stone. Emma stopped again, studying the dog. She tilted her head slightly, and Sarah saw something flicker in those vacant eyes, the first spark of real emotion in weeks. 3 more steps, each one braver than the last. Now she stood directly beside Brody, so close she could touch him. The dog's breathing was slow and steady. Emma watched his chest rise and fall, mesmerized. The room held its collective breath. Emma's small hand, the one that had been clutching that teddy bear for 43 days straight, slowly extended. Her fingers trembled slightly as they moved toward Brody's golden fur. Contact. The moment her hand touched his soft coat, Emma's entire body seemed to exhale. Her shoulders dropped. Her face, so tense and blank for weeks, softened. Brody's tail wagged gently, but he still didn't lift his head, letting Emma explore at her own pace. The little girl's fingers moved through his fur, tentative at first, then with more confidence. She patted his side, feeling the warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing. And then, so quietly that Sarah almost missed it, Emma spoke. "Doggy." One word, just one single precious word. But it shattered the silence that had imprisoned her for 43 days. Maria's sob broke free, and she clamped both hands over her mouth, tears streaming freely now. Sarah felt her own eyes burning, her throat tight with emotion. Jake remained still, but Sarah saw the slight smile on his face, the satisfaction of someone who'd witnessed this miracle many times before but never grew tired of it. Emma patted Brody again, and this time her voice was slightly stronger, more present. "Nice doggy." She lowered herself to the floor, sitting cross-legged beside Brody, her hand never leaving his fur. The golden retriever finally lifted his head and looked at her directly, his tail wagging with more enthusiasm now. And Emma, the little girl who hadn't smiled in 6 weeks, who'd been trapped in silent trauma, smiled back. "Hi, doggy," she whispered, leaning her head against Brody's side. Maria collapsed into a chair, overwhelmed with relief and joy and disbelief all at once. Sarah moved to her side, squeezing her shoulder as they both watched the little girl and the dog. Jake quietly pulled out his phone, making notes. Sarah knew he was documenting the session, but she also saw him discreetly wipe at his own eyes. In that small conference room, with afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows and birds singing outside, a 3-year-old girl began to heal. And it all started with one word, doggy. Day 1 ended with Emma refusing to leave Brody's side. When Jake finally said they needed to go, the little girl's face crumpled, and for a terrifying moment, Sarah thought she might retreat back into silence. "We'll come back tomorrow," Jake promised, kneeling beside Emma. "Brody would really like to see you again. Would that be okay?" Emma nodded, the first nonverbal communication she'd offered anyone in weeks. "Can you say goodbye to Brody?" Jake asked gently. Emma threw her small arms around the dog's neck. "Bye-bye, Bewody," she whispered, mispronouncing his name in that endearing way toddlers do. Maria practically floated out of the courthouse, clutching Sarah's arm. "She spoke. Did you hear her? She spoke." "I heard," Sarah said, her own voice thick with emotion. "We're going to take this slow, Maria, one day at a time." That night, Sarah met with Judge Henderson in her chambers. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s, known for running a tight courtroom and having little patience for delays. "A continuance, Ms. Mitchell. The defense is already complaining about prosecutorial delays. Your Honor, I have a witness who couldn't speak a week ago. Today, she said 3 words. With a little more time, she might be able to testify. I'm requesting 2 more weeks. Judge Henderson studied Sarah over her reading glasses. You really think a dog is going to get a 3-year-old to testify about domestic violence? I think a dog already performed a miracle today, Sarah said firmly. I'm asking for the chance to see if he can perform another one. The judge sighed. 2 weeks. But Ms. Mitchell, if this doesn't work, I'm not granting another extension. That man deserves a speedy trial, guilty or not. Understood, Your Honor, thank you. Day 2 arrived with Emma practically dragging her mother into the courthouse. The transformation was already visible. She was alert, looking around, her eyes no longer vacant. "Be Wody here?" she asked Sarah the moment she saw her. "He'll be here soon," Sarah promised, her heart soaring at hearing Emma's voice again. When Jake and Brody arrived, Emma squealed, actually squealed with delight, and ran to the dog. Brody's tail wagged enthusiastically, and he lowered his head so Emma could hug him. "I missed you, B. Wody," Emma announced. Jake smiled at Sarah and Maria. "I'd say we're making progress." That session, Jake taught Emma simple commands. "Can you tell Brody to sit?" Emma's eyes widened. "Me tell him." "You're the boss," Jake said with a wink. "Sit, B. Wody," Emma commanded in her tiny voice. Brody sat immediately, and Emma dissolved into giggles. "He listened to me." For the next hour, Emma practiced commands: sit, stay, down, paw. Each time Brody obeyed, her confidence grew. Her laughter filled the room, a sound Maria hadn't heard in so long she'd forgotten how beautiful it was. "Good boy, B. Wody, you so smart," Emma praised, stroking his ears. Dr. Rachel Chen, the child psychologist, observed from the corner, taking detailed notes. During a break while Emma and Brody played with a soft toy, she pulled Sarah and Jake aside. "This is remarkable," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Emma's demonstrating trust, joy, and confidence, emotions that were completely absent last week. The dog provides non-judgmental companionship. He doesn't ask her questions, doesn't show fear or anxiety. He simply exists as a safe, constant presence." "But will it help her testify?" Sarah asked. Dr. Chen hesitated. "That's the delicate part. We need to be very careful about transitioning from play to discussing trauma. If we push too fast, she could shut down again." Day 3 brought unexpected progress. Emma arrived with a drawing she'd made, a stick figure girl standing next to a yellow blob with a smiley face. "I made this for B. Wody," she announced proudly. "That's beautiful," Jake said, examining the artwork seriously. "Who's this?" "That's me and that's B. Wody. We're friends." "Best friends?" Jake asked. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Best friends forever and ever." During this session, Dr. Chen began gently probing deeper. "Emma, can you tell Brody what your favorite food is?" "Strawberry ice cream," Emma declared, one hand resting on Brody's back. "What about your favorite toy?" "My teddy bear, but he's old. Mommy says we can get a new one." "What about your favorite thing to do with Mommy?" Emma's smile faltered slightly. "We used to go to the park, but we don't go anymore." "Why not?" Dr. Chen asked softly. Emma's hand tightened in Brody's fur. Because of the bad night." The room went completely still. This was the first time Emma had referenced that night voluntarily. Dr. Chen caught Jake's eye. He gave a subtle nod, "Keep going, but carefully." "The bad night sounds scary," Dr. Chen said. "Do you want to tell Brody about it?" Emma shook her head quickly. "No, I don't like that night." "That's okay. You don't have to talk about things that make you uncomfortable." But 5 minutes later, as Emma lay on the floor next to Brody, staring at the ceiling, she spoke again. "B. Wody, there was lots of yelling that night." Maria gasped softly. Sarah's pen froze over her notepad. "Hum," Dr. Chen hummed neutrally, encouraging but not pushing. Daddy was so mad. Mommy was scared. I was scared too. Emma rolled toward Brody, pressing her face into his fur. I don't want to talk about it more. You don't have to, Dr. Chen assured her. How about we teach Brody a new trick instead? The moment passed, but the breakthrough had been made. Emma had voluntarily mentioned that night. She'd spoken about fear, about violence, about trauma, even if only in the simplest terms. Day 4 transformed everything. Emma walked in confidently, greeting everyone with hellos and waves. When Brody arrived, she had a whole story to tell him about a butterfly she'd seen in the garden that morning. And it was orange and black, Biwodi. It landed right on the flower and stayed there and stayed there. Her animated chatter continued throughout the session. She was no longer the silent, traumatized child. She was becoming herself again, talkative, curious, playful. But the real breakthrough came unexpectedly. Emma was showing Brody how she could count to 10 when she suddenly stopped mid-count. Biwodi, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, can I tell you a secret? Everyone in the room tried not to react, afraid to break the spell. That bad night, I saw everything. She crawled closer to Brody, speaking directly into his ear, as if sharing confidential information only he could hear. Daddy hurt Mommy. He pushed her down. There was red stuff. Mommy said it was blood. I was so scared, Biwodi. I hid it under my bed. Tears rolled down Maria's cheeks as she listened to her daughter finally releasing the weight she'd been carrying. Mommy found me and we ran outside. The police came. They had loud cars with lights. Emma pulled back from Brody and looked into his eyes. But you know what, Biwodi? I'm brave now because you're my friend, and friends make you brave, right? Jake had to clear his throat several times. Even Dr. Chen wiped discreetly at her eyes. That's exactly right, Emma, Jake managed to say. Friends do make you brave. Emma smiled, that beautiful, innocent 3-year-old smile. I'm very brave now. As the session ended, Dr. Chen pulled Sarah aside. She's ready, not for a full trial but for a preliminary testimony. If we handle this correctly with Brody present and the right accommodations, Emma can tell her story. Sarah felt hope and fear warring in her chest. Are you sure? As sure as I can be. That little girl has found her voice again, and more importantly, she's found her courage. That night, Sarah filed paperwork with Judge Henderson. The competency hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Emma Rodriguez would have her day in court. With Brody by her side, Monday morning arrived with gray clouds hanging low over the Hamilton County Courthouse. Sarah Mitchell stood at the entrance, watching families and lawyers stream through security. Her stomach churned with nervous energy. Today would determine everything. Inside conference room 145, Emma was having a pre-hearing session with Brody. Sarah had insisted on this, one final moment of normalcy before the chaos of the courtroom. You doing okay? Jake asked, appearing beside Sarah with 2 cups of coffee. Terrified, Sarah admitted, accepting the cup gratefully. What if she freezes up? What if seeing her father triggers her? What if? What if we trust Emma? Jake interrupted gently. She's stronger than you think. These past days have proven that. She's 3 years old, Jake. 3. We're asking her to do something most adults couldn't handle. We're not asking her to do anything, Jake corrected. We're giving her the opportunity to speak her truth with support. There's a difference. At 9:45 a.m. it was time. Sarah, Maria, Jake, and Brody walked Emma toward courtroom 3. The little girl chattered happily, holding Brody's leash in one hand and her teddy bear in the other. Are there lots of people, Biwodi? Emma asked the dog. Mommy said there's a judge. Is a judge nice? They turned the corner, and the massive courtroom doors came into view. Dark oak, imposing, with brass handles that seemed designed to intimidate. Emma's steps slowed. That's a big door, she whispered. It is, Jake agreed. But remember, Brody will be right there with you the whole time. Sarah opened the door, and the courtroom was revealed. It was everything a courtroom should be, and everything a 3-year-old would find terrifying. High ceilings that made voices echo. The judge's bench towering above like a throne. Rows of seats filled with people, court staff, journalists, curious observers. Harsh fluorescent lighting that washed out colors and cast shadows. And there at the defense table sat Emma's father. Robert Rodriguez wore a suit Sarah knew his public defender had provided. His hair was neatly combed, his expression carefully neutral. But when his eyes landed on Emma, something flickered across his face, anger, perhaps, or calculation. Emma saw him. Her entire body went rigid, the color drained from her face. "No," she whispered, "no, no, no." Maria felt her daughter's hand become ice cold. "Emma, sweetie." "No," Emma's voice rose to a shriek. She dropped Brody's leash and stumbled backward, crashing into her mother's legs. Don't want to go in there." People in the courtroom turned to stare. Robert's lawyer immediately stood, ready to object to the disruption. "Emma, honey, it's okay." Maria tried to soothe her, but Emma was beyond hearing. She pulled desperately toward the hallway, her small face crumpling in terror. No go in, please, Mommy, please." Tears streamed down her cheeks. Her breathing came in rapid, panicked gasps. All the progress of the past week seemed to evaporate in an instant. Sarah's heart sank like a stone. This wasn't going to work. They'd pushed too hard, too fast. Emma wasn't ready. She'd never be ready. "Ms. Mitchell," the bailiff appeared at the doorway. "Judge Henderson is ready to begin." Sarah looked at Jake helplessly. "I don't think." But Jake wasn't looking at her. He was looking down the hallway where Brody had calmly walked after Emma, following the little girl who'd dropped his leash. Emma had backed herself against the wall, sobbing into her hands. Maria knelt beside her, whispering reassurances that weren't working. Then Brody arrived. The golden retriever approached slowly, his head lowered, his tail giving one gentle wag. He sat directly in front of Emma, blocking her view of the courtroom door and everything beyond it. Emma's sobs caught in her throat. She lowered her hands, revealing red, tear-stained cheeks. "Biwody." The dog tilted his head, as if asking a question. Emma's breathing was still rapid, but she reached out one trembling hand to touch his fur. "I'm scared, Biwody. So scared." Brody leaned forward, resting his head gently against Emma's chest. The weight of him, the warmth, the steady rhythm of his breathing, it all grounded her in that moment. "That man in there," Emma whispered to the dog. "That's my daddy. He's the one who hurt Mommy." Jake moved closer but didn't interfere. He knew Brody was doing what he did best, being present, being safe, being the anchor Emma needed. "But you know what?" Emma continued, her voice still shaky but growing stronger. "I'm brave now, remember, you make me brave." She wrapped both arms around Brody's neck, burying her face in his fur. When she pulled back, her tears were drying. "Will you go with me, Biwody, into that scary room?" Brody's tail wagged. "You promise you won't leave me?" Another wag. Emma took a deep, shuddering breath, then another. She looked up at her mother, then at Jake, then at Sarah. "Okay," she said, her voice small but determined. "I can do it if Biwody comes." "That's my brave girl," Maria whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. They walked back toward the courtroom, Emma now gripping Brody's leash so tightly her knuckles were white. With each step, she glanced down at the dog beside her, drawing strength from his presence. They entered the courtroom again. Emma's steps faltered when she saw her father, but she didn't run this time. Instead, she pressed closer to Brody. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Patricia Henderson entered, her black robes flowing behind her. She took her seat at the bench and surveyed the courtroom with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes landed on Emma and Brody, and for a long moment the judge studied them both. Ms. Mitchell, Judge Henderson said, approach the bench. Defense counsel, you too. Sarah and Robert's public defender, Marcus Webb, walked to the judge's bench for a sidebar conference. Your Honor, Marcus began immediately, the defense objects to the presence of an animal in these proceedings. There's no precedent in this county, and the dog's presence could unduly influence. Mr. Webb, the judge interrupted, I've spent the weekend reading case law from 17 other states where facility dogs have been used in courtrooms. I've also spoken with 3 judges who have allowed such accommodations. The research is compelling. But Your Honor, I'm not finished. Judge Henderson's voice carried the weight of authority. I've also observed that your client's alleged victim is 3 years old and has been selectively mute for weeks following a traumatic event. I watched her have a panic attack in my courtroom doorway just moments ago. The only thing that calmed her was that dog. She looked directly at Emma, who sat in the front row with Maria, one hand on Brody's head. Mr. Webb, I'm going to allow the facility dog to remain with the witness during testimony. The dog will be positioned in a way that doesn't face the jury. Your objection is noted for the record, but overruled. Your Honor, this is highly prejudicial. What's prejudicial, counselor, is expecting a traumatized toddler to testify without appropriate support. This court has an obligation to pursue justice while also protecting vulnerable witnesses. We're going to do both. Judge Henderson banged her gavel. The witness may testify with the facility dog present. Bailiff, please arrange a modified witness stand. The bailiff brought out a booster seat and placed it on the witness chair. Next to the chair, he positioned a soft mat on the floor, a place for Brody to lie down. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, Your Honor. As she returned to the prosecutor's table, she caught Jake's eye. He nodded once, a gesture of confidence and support. Emma was called forward. With Maria's encouragement, she walked to the witness stand, holding Brody's leash. Jake walked with them, helping Emma into the booster seat and guiding Brody to lie on the mat beside her. The little girl looked impossibly small in that big chair, her feet dangling above the floor. But when her hand found Brody's head, her chin lifted slightly. Judge Henderson smiled kindly at Emma. Hello, young lady. My name is Judge Henderson. Do you know why you're here today? Emma's voice was barely audible. To talk about the bad night. That's right. And that handsome dog is going to stay right there with you, okay? Emma nodded, her fingers tightening in Brody's fur. Dr. Rachel Chen approached, having been designated as the intermediary questioner, someone Emma already trusted. Hi, Emma, Dr. Chen said warmly. Remember me? Hi, Dr. Rachel. Emma, I'm going to ask you some questions just like we practiced. You can take your time answering, okay? And if you need a break, you just tell Brody and we'll stop. Emma looked down at Brody, who gazed up at her with those patient brown eyes. Okay, Emma said, I'm ready. The courtroom held its breath as Dr. Chen began. The testimony was about to start. Dr. Rachel Chen began with the easiest questions, the ones they'd practiced all week. Emma, can you tell everyone your full name? Emma Sophia Rodriguez. Her voice was tiny but clear. And how old are you, Emma? The little girl held up 3 fingers, this many. A few people in the courtroom smiled. Judge Henderson nodded encouragingly. That's very good, Emma. Now can you tell me your favorite color? Pink and purple, and sometimes yellow. Those are beautiful colors. What about your favorite food? Strawberry ice cream. Emma's face brightened momentarily, with sprinkles. Dr. Chen continued building rapport, asking about Emma's toys, her favorite cartoon, her best friend from preschool. With each answer, Emma relaxed slightly, her fingers rhythmically stroking Brody's soft ears. Then came the transition. Emma, I need to ask you about something that happened a while ago, something that was very scary. Is that okay? Emma's hand stopped moving. Brody, sensing the shift, lifted his head slightly. "The bad night," Emma whispered. "Yes, sweetie, can you tell me about that night?" Emma's bottom lip trembled. She looked at her mother in the front row, then at the judge, then at the crowded courtroom. Her breathing quickened. There was yelling," she began, her voice barely audible. "Who was yelling, Emma?" "Daddy, he was so mad." Emma's eyes darted toward the defense table where her father sat, and her whole body tensed. "He was yelling at Mommy." "What happened next?" Emma opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head frantically. I can't, I don't." Sarah's heart sank. This was it, the moment Emma would shut down again. She could see the defense attorney leaning forward, ready to argue that the child was incompetent to testify. Dr. Chen tried a different approach. "Emma, it's okay. You're very safe here, can you?" But Emma wasn't listening. She was looking down at Brody, whose brown eyes gazed up at her with infinite patience and understanding. And then something remarkable happened. Emma slid off the booster seat and sat directly on the floor beside Brody, wrapping her arms around his neck. She turned her back to the entire courtroom, to the judge, the lawyers, the spectators, her father, and pressed her face into Brody's fur. "Objection," Marcus Webb started to rise. "Your Honor, the witness." Judge Henderson held up her hand sharply. "Mr. Webb, sit down." The courtroom fell into absolute silence. Emma began to speak, but she wasn't talking to Dr. Chen or the judge or anyone in that courtroom. She was talking to Brody, as if they were alone in conference room 145, as if it was just a little girl and her best friend sharing secrets. "B. Wody," Emma whispered, her voice soft but clear enough for the microphones to pick up. "That night was so scary. Do you want to know what happened?" Brody's tail gave a gentle wag. "Daddy came home and he was so mad. I don't know why. He was yelling really loud words, bad words that Mommy says I'm not supposed to say." Emma paused, gathering courage from the warmth of the dog beside her. "Mommy was trying to make him stop yelling. She said, 'Robert, please, Emma is sleeping.' But I wasn't sleeping, B. Wody. I was awake. I heard everything." In the courtroom, Maria's silent tears flowed freely. Sarah's pen moved across her notepad, documenting every precious word. "Then Daddy pushed Mommy. Hard. She fell down on the floor and hit her head on the table, the coffee table with the sharp corner. Remember I told you about our coffee table?" Emma's voice remained steady, talking to Brody as naturally as if she were describing a trip to the park. "Mommy was crying, B. Wody. She was saying, 'Stop, please stop.' But Daddy didn't stop. He kicked her, right here." Emma touched her own ribs, and Mommy made a scared crying sound. The courtroom was frozen. Even the court reporter's fingers had slowed, as if typing too loudly might shatter the moment. "There was red stuff on the floor. Mommy told me later it was blood from her head. I got so scared, B. Wody. My tummy felt funny and I wanted to cry, but I was too scared to make sounds." Emma buried her face deeper into Brody's neck, drawing strength before continuing. "Daddy kept saying mean things, he said." She paused, struggling with the memory. "He said bad words about Mommy. Then he kicked her again. Mommy was trying to crawl away, but she couldn't go fast. She was hurt too much." Robert Rodriguez sat stone still at the defense table, his face pale. His attorney had stopped taking notes, simply staring at the small child delivering such devastating testimony. "I wanted to help Mommy, B. Wody. I really wanted to, but I was too scared. So I run back to my room and hide it under my bed with my teddy bear. I pulled my blanket down there too and made it dark." Emma's voice cracked slightly, but she continued. "I stayed under there for a long time. I could hear Daddy yelling more, and then a door slammed really loud. Then it was quiet. So quiet, B. Wody. Then I heard Mommy calling me. 'Emma, Emma, baby, where are you?' She sounded hurt and scared. I came out from under my bed and Mommy was at my door. Her face had blood on it and she was holding her tummy. Emma pulled back from Brody to look into his eyes, as if checking that he understood the gravity of what she was sharing. Mommy grabbed my hand and we ran outside. She was moving funny, like it hurt to walk. We went to the neighbor's house and they called the police. The police came with loud cars and bright lights. They were nice to me, Wody. They gave me a blanket because I was cold. She stroked Brody's ears gently. That was the bad night. That's what happened. Daddy hurt Mommy really bad and I saw it all. And it was so scary that I couldn't talk anymore. But then I met you and you made me brave again. Emma hugged Brody tightly. You're the best friend ever, Wody. Thank you for letting me tell you. The silence in the courtroom was profound. Judge Henderson wiped her eyes discreetly. Several jury members, though this was just a competency hearing, had tears streaming down their faces. Even the bailiff stood with his hand over his mouth, visibly moved. Sarah looked at Marcus Webb. The defense attorney's shoulders had slumped. He knew everyone knew that what they just witnessed was the most authentic, devastating testimony imaginable. There was no coaching, no rehearsal, no adult influence, just a 3-year-old girl telling her dog the truth. Dr. Chen approached gently. Emma, thank you for being so brave. Can you come back to the chair now? Emma climbed back onto the booster seat, her hand immediately returning to Brody's head. Emma, Dr. Chen asked softly, is everything you told Brody true? Yes, Emma said simply. I don't tell lies. Mommy says lying is bad. One more question, sweetheart. Do you see the person who hurt your mommy in this room? Emma's eyes went directly to the defense table. Her finger pointed without hesitation. That's him, that's my daddy. He's the one who hurt Mommy. Robert Rodriguez looked away, unable to meet his daughter's gaze. No further questions, Your Honor, Dr. Chen said quietly. Judge Henderson looked at the defense table. Mr. Webb, do you wish to cross-examine? Marcus Webb stood slowly. He looked at Emma, at Brody, at the little girl who just delivered the most powerful testimony he'd heard in 20 years of practice. No, Your Honor, he said quietly. No questions. It was over. Emma had done the impossible. Judge Henderson called a 15-minute recess. As the gavel struck, the courtroom erupted in hushed whispers. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Spectators dabbed at their eyes. But all eyes followed the small girl being carried out by her mother, one hand still reaching back toward Brody. In the hallway, Maria collapsed onto a bench, clutching Emma to her chest. She sobbed deep, wrenching sobs of relief and anguish and pride all tangled together. You did it, baby. You did it, she whispered into Emma's hair. You were so brave, so brave. Emma patted her mother's wet cheek. Don't cry, Mommy, it's okay now. I told Wody everything. Jake knelt beside them, Brody pressing close. Emma, you helped a lot of people today. Do you know that? Emma tilted her head, confused. I just talked to Wody. I know, but by talking to Brody, you told the truth. And telling the truth is one of the bravest things anyone can do. Sarah stood a few feet away, her phone already buzzing with messages. But she ignored them all, watching this little girl who just accomplished something extraordinary. A court clerk approached. Ms. Mitchell, the defense attorney is asking for a meeting, immediately. Sarah's eyebrows rose. Already. He's in conference room B. Sarah found Marcus Webb packing the small room, his tie loosened, his usually composed face showing cracks of emotion. That was, he stopped, searching for words. I've never seen anything like that in my entire career. Emma's testimony was powerful, Sarah agreed carefully. Powerful, Ms. Mitchell, that was devastating. Marcus ran his hand through his graying hair. My client is guilty. We both know it. I've known it from day one, but I had a job to do, make the state prove its case. He turned to face her directly. You just proved it beyond any shadow of doubt with a 3-year-old and a dog. The jury hasn't even been seated yet, and I already know we've lost." Sarah remained silent, letting him continue. "My client wants to take the plea deal. The original offer, 15 years with possibility of parole after 10. Sarah had offered this deal weeks ago before Emma's breakthrough. It felt almost too lenient now, after hearing that child's testimony. "I need to speak with the victim," Sarah said. "Of course, but Ms. Mitchell," Marcus met her eyes. "For what it's worth, what you did for that little girl, getting her voice back, that matters more than any conviction. She'll carry that courage for the rest of her life." 20 minutes later, Sarah sat with Maria in a private office. Emma was down the hall with Jake and Brody, being praised by court staff and given cookies by the bailiff. "He wants to take the plea," Sarah explained. 15 years. He'd serve at least 10 before parole eligibility. Maria was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands that still bore faint scars from that terrible night. "Will Emma have to testify again?" "No, if he takes the plea, it's over. No trial, no cross-examination, no more courtrooms." "Then I want him to take it." Maria's voice was firm. "I don't want Emma to go through this again. She did enough today. She was brave enough for a lifetime." Sarah nodded. "I'll tell them we accept." "Ms. Mitchell," Maria reached across and gripped Sarah's hand. "Thank you for not giving up on Emma, for finding Jake and Brody, for believing a 3-year-old could do this." "She believed in herself," Sarah said softly. "She just needed the right friend to help her find that belief." The courtroom reconvened at 3:00 p.m. Emma was not present. Maria had taken her home, finally free from the weight of what she'd been carrying. Robert Rodriguez stood before Judge Henderson, his public defender beside him. "Mr. Rodriguez," the judge said, her voice cold and formal, "I understand you wish to change your plea." "Yes, Your Honor." His voice was barely audible. "To the charge of felonious assault, how do you plead?" A long pause, then guilty. "To the charge of domestic violence." "Guilty." Judge Henderson's face remained impassive, but her eyes were hard as steel. "Mr. Rodriguez, I heard your daughter testify today. That child showed more courage in 15 minutes than you've demonstrated in your entire life." Robert's head dropped. "She was 3 years old and she had to tell a dog, about the violence she witnessed because the trauma of what you did stole her voice. Do you understand the magnitude of what you did to your family?" "Yes, Your Honor." "I accept your guilty plea. Sentencing is scheduled for 4 weeks from today. Until then, you'll remain in custody. And Mr. Rodriguez," the judge leaned forward, "I want you to know that your daughter is braver than you will ever be." The gavel struck. It was over. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. Word of Emma's testimony had spread quickly, the 3-year-old who talked to a dog and brought down her abuser. Local news cameras captured Jake and Brody walking to their patrol car. A reporter pushed forward with a microphone. "Officer Martinez, can you comment on what happened today?" Jake paused, his hand on Brody's head. "A very brave little girl found her voice. That's all that matters." "Is it true she only spoke to the dog during testimony?" Brody provides a safe, non-judgmental presence for trauma victims. Emma felt comfortable sharing her truth with him. That's what facility dogs do. They create space for healing. "Will you be using Brody in more cases?" Jake smiled slightly. "We always have. Today just happened to show people why this work is so important." As cameras flashed, Brody sat calmly at Jake's side, his tail wagging gently. He didn't know he was becoming famous. He only knew that he'd helped his friend Emma, just like he'd helped so many others. That evening, Sarah sat in her office, finally alone with her thoughts. Her phone had exploded with calls, prosecutors from across the state wanting to know about facility dogs, victim advocates asking for resources, even a call from the state attorney general's office. Emma's testimony had done more than convict one man. It had opened eyes to a powerful tool for justice. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Jake stood in the doorway, Brody beside him. "Thought you might still be here," he said. "Couldn't leave, too much to process." Sarah gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Jake, what happened today? I've been a prosecutor for 7 years. I've never seen anything like it." "Emma is special." "No, I mean yes, she is. But this whole approach, what Brody does, it's revolutionary. How many cases have you and Brody worked?" Jake considered. 47, counting Emma. Children, domestic violence victims, elderly witnesses, all of them traumatized, most unable to speak about what they'd experienced. "And how many were able to testify?" 41. Sarah's eyes widened. "That's an 87% success rate." "It's not about success rates," Jake said quietly. "It's about giving people their voice back. Some of them testify, some don't. But all of them heal a little bit because someone, even if that someone is a dog, listens without judgment." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "This needs to be bigger than one officer and one dog in one county." "I've been saying that for 3 years." "Then let's make it happen. What do you need?" Jake smiled. "Everything: funding, training programs, more dogs, support from the courts, public awareness." "You'll have it," Sarah promised. "After today, after what Emma showed everyone, you'll have it all." They shook hands, a partnership forming that would change countless lives. 3 months later, the Hamilton County Courthouse looked different. Bright banners hung from the columns announcing Courthouse Facility Dog Program launch ceremony. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. Inside, the main rotunda buzzed with excitement. Sarah Mitchell stood near the podium, reviewing her speech notes, but she kept getting distracted, watching the doorway, waiting. "They're here," Jake's voice came from behind her. Sarah turned and her breath caught. Emma Rodriguez walked through the courthouse doors holding her mother's hand, but she wasn't the same terrified, silent child from 3 months ago. This Emma wore a bright yellow dress with sunflowers on it. Her dark curls bounced as she actually skipped into the building. Her eyes sparkled with life and mischief and joy. The moment Emma spotted Brody standing with Jake near the podium, she let out a squeal that echoed through the marble rotunda. "BWODY." She broke free from Maria's grip and ran full speed across the polished floor, her little shoes making clicking sounds, her arms outstretched. Brody's tail wagged furiously. The dignified facility dog, who normally maintained perfect composure, actually wiggled with excitement as Emma crashed into him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I missed you so much, BWODY, so much." "We've been practicing her public speaking voice," Maria said apologetically to Sarah, though she was beaming with pride. "As you can hear, she's got it down." Sarah laughed, a real joyful laugh. "She sounds perfect." The ceremony began at 2:00 p.m. The rotunda was packed with county commissioners, judges, prosecutors, victim advocates, police officers, and journalists. But the front row was reserved for special guests: 7 children and their families, all victims who'd been helped by Brody over the past 3 years. County Commissioner Robert Chen approached the podium, his voice carrying through the sound system. 3 months ago, something extraordinary happened in Courtroom 3. A 3-year-old girl who hadn't spoken in weeks found her voice with the help of a remarkable dog. That testimony not only brought a dangerous man to justice, but also opened our eyes to something we'd been missing. He gestured to Jake and Brody. Officer Jake Martinez and his partner Brody have been quietly helping trauma victims for 3 years, working without official recognition or funding, using their own time and resources. Today, that changes. Commissioner Chen held up an official document. I'm proud to announce that Hamilton County is establishing the first fully funded courthouse facility dog program in the state of Ohio. This program will ensure that vulnerable witnesses, especially children, have access to the support they need to seek justice. Applause erupted. Emma clapped too, not fully understanding but caught up in the excitement. Furthermore, the commissioner continued, 5 additional counties across Ohio have committed to establishing their own programs, inspired by what happened here. We've received inquiries from 14 other states. What started with one officer, one dog, and one brave little girl is becoming a movement. Sarah was called to speak next. She approached the podium, her hands trembling slightly. I've been a prosecutor for 7 years. I thought I understood my job: gather evidence, build cases, seek convictions. But Emma Rodriguez taught me something different. She taught me that justice isn't just about punishing criminals. It's about giving victims their power back. Sarah looked directly at Emma, who sat in the front row, one hand resting on Brody's head. Emma couldn't speak for 43 days. The trauma she experienced stole her voice, her smile, her childhood innocence. Traditional therapy wasn't reaching her. We were out of options. Then Jake brought Brody into her life. Her voice grew thick with emotion. What happened in that courtroom 3 months ago wasn't just a testimony. It was a miracle. Emma didn't talk to lawyers or judges or adults. She talked to her friend. She trusted Brody with her deepest pain, and he gave her the courage to speak it aloud. Sarah paused, collecting herself. Because of Emma's bravery, we now have funding for 3 full-time facility dogs. Because of her courage, hundreds of other victims will have the support they need. One little girl changed an entire system. The applause was thunderous. Judge Patricia Henderson spoke next, announcing new courthouse protocols for vulnerable witnesses. Then Jake was called forward, visibly uncomfortable with the attention. I don't have a fancy speech prepared, he admitted. I just want to say that Brody does all the real work. I'm just the guy who holds his leash. Laughter rippled through the crowd. But seriously, Jake continued, facility dogs save lives. Not dramatically, not overnight, but quietly, patiently, one victim at a time. They sit with people in their darkest moments and remind them they're not alone. That's worth more than any conviction. The final speaker was someone no one expected. Maria Rodriguez approached the podium, Emma on her hip. The little girl held the microphone curiously. My daughter wants to say something, Maria announced. The room fell silent. Emma, with all the confidence of a 4-year-old who'd conquered her fears, spoke into the microphone. Hi everybody, I'm Emma and this is my best friend Bewody. She pointed at the golden retriever, who sat regally beside Jake. When I was scared, Bewody helped me be brave. Now I'm not scared anymore. And if you're scared, Bewody can help you too, or other dogs like Bewody, because dogs are good listeners and they give the best hugs. Emma wiggled to be put down. Maria lowered her to the ground and Emma walked to Brody, wrapping her arms around him. Thank you, Bewody, for being my friend. You're the bestest dog in the whole world. There wasn't a dry eye in the rotunda. Commissioner Chen returned to the podium. Emma Rodriguez, for your extraordinary courage and the impact your testimony has had on our justice system, the County Commission would like to present you with this certificate of valor and this special gift. He handed Maria a framed certificate with Emma's name in elegant script. Then he brought out a large framed photograph, Emma sitting in the witness stand, her hand on Brody's head, captured in that powerful moment when she'd found her voice. Emma gasped, "That's me and Bewody." That's right. This photo will hang in the courthouse lobby, reminding everyone who enters these doors that courage comes in all sizes, even in 3-year-olds who talk to dogs. The ceremony concluded with a ribbon cutting. Emma was given the oversized scissors, with help from adults, to officially open the Facility Dog Program office. Cameras flashed as she cut the ribbon, Brody sitting proudly beside her. Afterward, reporters swarmed, asking questions. One asked Emma, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Emma didn't hesitate. A police officer, with a dog partner just like Jake and Brody. As the sun set over Hamilton County, Sarah stood in the now-quiet rotunda, looking at Emma's photograph hanging on the wall. The little girl in the picture looked so small, so vulnerable, yet so incredibly brave. Jake approached Brody at his side. "Quite a day." "Quite a 3 months," Sarah corrected. "Jake, do you realize what's happening? We've received funding requests from 8 counties. The state attorney general's office wants to create statewide standards. There's talk of federal legislation." "All because one little girl talked to a dog," Jake said softly. "No," Sarah corrected. "All because you believed that girl deserved a chance to be heard, and you had the tools to help her." Outside, Emma's laughter echoed as she played in the courthouse garden, chasing butterflies while Brody watched protectively nearby. Maria sat on a bench, finally able to breathe, finally able to see her daughter happy again. Emma ran back to Brody, throwing her arms around him. "Brody, did you see that butterfly? It was yellow, like sunshine, like happy." The dog's tail wagged as Emma chattered away, sharing every thought, every joy, every wonder, all the things she couldn't say 3 months ago. From darkness had come light. From trauma had come healing. From one broken little girl and one patient dog had come a revolution in how the justice system treats its most vulnerable witnesses. Sometimes heroes have 4 legs and a wagging tail. Sometimes courage comes in the smallest packages. And sometimes, all it takes to change the world is one 3-year-old who was brave enough to tell her truth to a friend who would always listen. Emma's voice had been found, and it would echo through courtrooms across the nation for years to come, helping countless others find their own voices too. In the end, that was the greatest testimony of all. The end.